Shrouded in the intrigue of an urban myth about a deadly acid trip and cryptic lyrics, it was the track that etched a future superstar onto the Mount Rushmore of rock and roll storytellers. The fact and fiction surrounding one of the greatest rock songs ever. In hindsight, it's actually this legend's biggest hit, except for the fact that it wasn't actually a hit. It's going to shock you when you find out, coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you've ever been curious about the stories behind the art, the lyrics, and the music of rock and roll, this channel is one stop you're going to want to make. Just subscribe below right now, click the big red button. You get the stories from the legends. Also, if you'd like to help our mission of curating this history and receive benefit for doing so, take a look at our Patreon below for even more content. So it's time for another edition of our show, Breakthrough. This is where we break down that singular sensation that kicked open the door to an artist's career for long-term success. This one packs so much power, it'll give you a roundhouse kick to the jaw from one of the greatest who ever stepped up to a microphone. When Tom Petty released his legendary debut album, Breakdown was the first single released, becoming their first top 40 hit, actually.
Baby, breakdown, go ahead, give it to me.
Just a while later, when Tom and the Heartbreakers released American Girl from the album, it didn't even chart in America. But it started the flame that would enable Tom and the band to dominate into the next few decades. But let's go back to the beginning here. So there were two events that proved most pivotal in forging Tom Petty's journey to superstardom. The first was actually meeting king of rock and roll himself, Elvis Presley. This is when he was 10 years old in '62. He was on the set of Follow That Dream, a movie that Elvis was starring in at the time. Tom's uncle was working on the set, and one day his aunt took him to the location where they were shooting, and Tom's uncle introduced his nephew to the king. Can you imagine that? Tom Petty meeting Elvis Presley. Petty described the life-changing moment as a religious experience.
My pop's an ornery man, Judge. That's because he's so smart. He can't stand it when people act stupid.
The second defining happening was when Tom saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in '64. Like so many other aspiring artists that saw that landmark broadcast, there was no turning back for young Tom Petty. Petty saw the Beatles and the audience, the hysteria. He discovered his purpose in life was to become a rock and roll star and, to put a band together. So as he started to make his way into the world, he was a starving musician, just like anybody. Just out of high school, he grabbed some random jobs to make a few bucks around his home in Gainesville, Florida. And one of those odd jobs was that of a grave digger. He took the job because he could dress slovenly, and no one would care. The first band that Petty put together to follow his Beatles-inspired career path was a frat house group called the Sundowners. Followed by the much more notable outfit, Mudcrutch, that he founded with Tom Leadon in 1970. Tom met his longtime collaborator and close friend, the great Mike Campbell, during the Mudcrutch days. This is when Campbell shared the lead guitarist role in the group with Leadon. The band members moved to L.A., it happened in 1974, and they were seeking fame and fortune, but instead, the band quickly began to unravel, leading to the emergence of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. This happened in 1976. Like I said, the band released their self-titled debut with Breakdown as the lead single. And man, then all hell broke loose with American Girl that very same year.
Well, she was an American girl.
Petty wrote a song from a small apartment that he leased in Encino, California, that many believe was based on a disturbing urban myth about a University of Florida co-ed that took LSD. And legend has it that the effects of the hallucinogenic made her believe that she could fly, and she jumped out of her dorm window on the 13th floor of the Beatty Towers, tragically falling to her death on the concrete below.
Take it easy, baby. Make it last all night.
The mention of 441 in verse 2 reinforces the theory that Petty was indeed writing about the alleged incident in Gainesville, contending that the selection of the numbers 441 refers to the freeway that runs parallel to the University of Florida campus where Beatty Towers is located. Well, it was kind of cold that night. She stood alone on her balcony. Yeah, she could hear the cars roll by out on 441 like waves crashing on the beach.
She could hear the cars roll back out on 441.
Petty officially denounced speculation that American Girl was written about the alleged incident. From his own lips, Tom wasn't inspired by anything associated with Florida when he wrote American Girl. It was the 101 freeway that ran just outside his Encino apartment near a home that the great Leon Russell once lived that sparked the prose for the second verse. Petty recalled that the sound of the nonstop flow of traffic on the freeway sounded like waves crashing on an ocean beach.
At old 441, like waves crashing on the beach.
For those of you that know California really well, Encino is in the valley, far from the ocean beaches of Santa Monica and Malibu. And the cars going by on the freeway were, in essence, Petty's ocean. Despite Petty's public denial of writing American Girl about the alleged acid trip that caused the tragic death of a young woman, the pronouncement didn't stop factions from perpetuating the folktale. It's rock and roll. That's how we do it. The Legends also created an annual Halloween ritual in Gainesville where students of the University of Florida throw a big party at a house that they believe is a former residence of the beloved rocker. Fact is that Petty never lived there. He only lived in apartments or at his mother's place. Although there's no record of a woman jumping to her death from Beatty Towers in the 60s, paranormal enthusiasts have promoted it even further. They've gone as far as conjuring up the story of a ghostly figure that reportedly roams the hallways of Beatty Towers. For the record, Tom Petty wrote American Girl about disillusion and disenchantment. The narrative really represents the end of innocence experienced by a coming-of-age baby boomer who's longing to find something more in life than what she has. Petty's heroine in American Girl, she's looking for the strength to overcome disappointment and heartbreak and move on with her life. Like it says in the song, well, she was an American girl raised on promises. She couldn't help thinking that there was a little more to life somewhere else. Speaking of narratives on the end of innocence, Mike Campbell has been involved in a few of the greatest examples of this frequent subject of the rock and roll canon. He played on American Girl, and then years later, he would actually co-write another legendary song on the subject matter with Don Henley in 1984, Boys of Summer. But I digress. Actually, we have the story of that from Mike Campbell. I'll link to it below. As we continue to break down this classic hit, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses that I always jam. Getting a new pair of glasses has never been easier with Zenni. You choose your look, you put in your prescription. You can even see how you look with their mirror feature, Zenni's mirror feature. Make sure to click on the link below in our description to check it out, Zenni.com. So Tom Petty loved American Girl. He felt that he'd written a really good one here. Heartbreakers virtuoso Mike Campbell calls American Girl a beautiful love song. It was also the song that cemented Campbell's belief in the serious potential of Mr. Tom Petty. I mean, the writing was brilliant, and the musical structure of the track enabled the band to zero in on a vibe that became distinctly attached to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And Petty and Campbell were often asked about the song's suicidal overtones, which was the result of the misinterpreted passage in that first verse. After all, it was a great big world with lots of places to run to. And if she had to die trying, she had one little promise she was going to keep. The line, if she had to die trying, was not about attempting suicide, though. It was about perseverance and, not running away from your problems. The palpitating Mike Campbell guitar riff on American Girl, it puts us in the thrill of the fast lane. That's what he does so well. I love Mike Campbell's work on this track. I mean, it's really interesting. It's like a mosh of a Bo Diddley ham-bone rhythm and a new wave pulsation. Never gets old, never gets tired, always revs up the senses. The arrangement of American Girl, it accelerates with Stan Lynch's urgent drumming and Ron Blair's chunky bass line. And of course, Benmont Tench, he added that secret sauce to American Girl with his exceptional layer of piano and Hammond organ. And as a special guest on the recording, backing vocals were delivered by the late Phil Seymour, best known as the main vocalist and drummer from the Dwight Twilley Band. I mean, American Girl is a perfect example of Tom Petty's perceptive lyricism. Throughout his illustrious career, Tom Petty wrote songs with a profoundly realistic narrative. That made you feel that he wrote the song exclusively for you and for me. American Girl has set the course for empathic rockers like Refugee and Even the Losers, You Got Lucky, Free Fallin', Mary Jane's Last Dance, among countless others. Petty credited Danny Cordell, the producer on the self-titled debut, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers LP, with helping him understand the importance of creating a story inside the lyric of a song so that people can really relate to it. Cordell wisely imparted to Petty that putting a little truth in a song, it elevates the song's power with the audience. The truth that oozes from American Girl is a big part of what makes this song such a timeless classic. American Girl was aptly cut at Shelter Studios in Hollywood. It was actually on July 4th, the National Day of American Independence. Now, Petty and the Heartbreakers, they didn't circle the calendar intending to record the song on Independence Day, but the patriotic spirit of the day certainly could have had an effect on the title of the song. Not sure, but although the tune was all about an American girl, the song didn't fare well in the United States. Like I said earlier, this classic slice of American rock, heartland rock, it didn't even crack the Billboard Hot 100. That's shocking, since it's Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' most streamed song ever. Remember, that's his most streamed with the Heartbreakers. Free Fallin' is considered a solo song, so you have to keep that in mind. However, the British audience, they understood American Girl and they fell in love with the song at the time during an extensive tour of England with the great Nils Lofgren, who plays in the E Street Band now. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers attracted legions of fans that helped the single climb to number 40 on the UK singles chart in 1977.
Well, she was an American girl.
Perhaps the highest praise given to the song, though, is from Tom Petty himself when he called American Girl one of his favorite songs, his favorite self-written compositions. When the song came out in 1977, American Girl reminded many of Roger McGuinn's 12-string Rickenbacker guitar line from the 60s, when he was the co-leader of the Byrds and had that distinct sound. McGuinn heard the similarities and he recorded a version of American Girl in 1977 on his album Thunderbird, in which he sounds remarkably like Tom Petty. Of course, we know now that Petty was a Byrds and McGuinn disciple, heavily influenced by one of the most game-changing bands in their work in the 60s and 70s. American Girl is the opening track for the motion picture Chasing. It's also prominently placed in Fast Times at Ridgemont High in 1982. As also in That's My Boy in 2012. And, of course, that suspenseful scene when a victim is about to be abducted by villain Buffalo Bill in the 91 thriller Silence of the Lambs.
Take it easy, baby. Make last all night.
And the way they show it in Silence of the Lambs is one of the most memorable placements of a rock song ever, in my opinion. For me, it's one of the moments that I most vividly remember from that iconic film. Jonathan Demme was a master of music placements in his legendary career, and it actually kind of made it more haunting, really. American Girl is one of the classics of the rock canon that seems to mesmerize every generation. And, it was actually the last song that Tom Petty performed in front of a live audience before his shocking, untimely death. It was his encore to close out an amazing finale on the 40th anniversary tour by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers that happened at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles in it was September 25th, 2017. Of course, Tom died from a lethal accidental drug overdose on October 2nd, just 1 week after their last show at the Bowl, leaving all of us just reeling in disbelief. I mean, along with Eddie Van Halen's death, it broke my heart more than any passing of a musician that I can remember. I mean, Tom Petty is an American institution. I remember when his greatest hits CD came out, and my dad always had it on repeat when he, worked in his paint shop that was outside next to our house. He had a shop. I remember one time my mom asked me to go get my dad because, dinner was ready. And I remember complaining that I didn't want to walk out in the blizzard and 4 feet of snow because, it was during winter. So I walked out to the shop and immediately I saw him rocking out to American Girl. After a few seconds, he asked me to help him move a big cabinet that he was, varnishing out there. I think I've mentioned many times, for those of you who are new, my dad was a painting contractor. So as I started, helping him move this thing, before I knew it, I was singing right along to every word. If you remember Tom's greatest hits album that came out in '93, American Girl was the very first track.
Oh yeah, all right.
Well, we got so lost in the music and conversation about Tom and the Heartbreakers, I completely forgot about telling him to come in for dinner. By the time my mom walked out, pretty pissed, we were well into Free Fallin', which I remember was track 14. And we're singing and laughing, just having a great time.
Free falling.
I remember blaming Tom Petty that day, saying, don't be mad at me. It's Tom Petty's fault. Really was. I mean, he wrote so many brilliant songs. It just got you lost hypnotized by his timeless music. When I heard that Tom was on life support and likely not going to make it, the first person I called was my dad. We mourned his death together like a family member. He was easily one of the greatest of the rock and roll era. He was a true American rock poet. And, I've told people this, but I made a top 15 list of legends that I wanted to interview when I started doing this 9 years ago. And Tom was like number 3 or 4 that I wrote down. There'll never be another. That's for damn sure. Who knows? Maybe my dad's run into him on the other side. Let's close this feature with Tom's signature chorus for one of his personal favorites and one of ours. Oh yeah, all right. Take it easy, baby. Make it last all night. She was an American girl. He was an American poet.
She was an American girl.
Leave us a comment about this legendary artist of the rock and roll era. Tell us your memories of this song, this album, greatest hits album. What was your favorite track? Did you get as lost as I did? That's just one of those greatest hits albums that everybody has. Let's have a great discussion below. If you like our content, we do invite you to be a permanent part of our community by subscribing below. Go grab some merch at professorofrock.com as well, Vintage Years collection. This helps our mission of keeping the music alive. That's the idea. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, friends.